100 is the new 30. Most doctors treat disease. Dr. Jeffrey Gladden treats human potential. This isn't just about how to slow aging. This is about how to live young for a lifetime.
Hey, give us a little bit of your time, give us a little bit of your bandwidth, and you will get so darn much out of this episode. Kelly, well said. Let's get to it. Okay, welcome to the Fit Over 50 Life podcast. I am your host, Mark Patrick, and that is my co-host, Kelly Calabrese. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Gladden, who's going to talk us all into living to 100 years old, hopefully. Great book he has. We're going to talk about that today. What I'd like Kelly to do is do a formal introduction for you, Dr. Gladden. Then we'll get a little bit of your backstory. Then I want to dive into everything. Everybody cool with that?
Absolutely.
All right, go for it, Kelly.
Yeah, so today's very special guest is Dr. Jeffrey Gladden. He is a board-certified interventional cardiologist and the founder of Gladden Longevity. He is one of the most forward-thinking pioneers and physicians on the planet in the space of longevity medicine. And after decades and thousands of heart procedures, he faced his own health challenges, which I'm sure we'll hear about in midlife, and that really changed everything. And he stepped away from the operating table and onto the frontier of age reversal and age hacking and regenerative medicine and human optimization. And now he's helping people all over the world to deconstruct their bodies, to decode aging, and really redesign health itself into what he calls the 5 circles of longevity. And he is on a mission to make 100 the new 30. So Dr. Gladden,
wait, you got to hold up your book at the same time as mine, Kelly. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, we're fans. We're reading.
I'm almost done here, so I'm on page 295. I'm getting there. It's a meaty book.
No, you're just getting started, man. Just getting started.
You're beating me.
Anyway, welcome to our show. Appreciate everything. Maybe you could share with our audience your backstory a little bit more in detail and what made you shift into the longevity and what we're doing here today.
Yeah, so, I was an interventional cardiologist. I love doing that. I came to Texas in 88 out of Colorado. I had done my cardiology training up there. And, I love the work, quite honestly. We were always at the cutting edge of interventional techniques, whether it was angioplasty, stents, intracoronary ultrasound, different devices. I had the opportunity to, build cath labs and co-found a heart hospital and do all kinds of things in that space. So I really was enjoying that space. But what happened to me in my 50s was actually my early 50s is I started feeling exhausted all the time. And it wouldn't matter if I got, 2-3 nights sleep in a row, I would still wake up feeling exhausted. And my kids would, kind of make fun of me. Dad's tired all the time. He's always tired, right? And then I was putting on weight, and I was losing strength. And I was also noticing that I was developing more brain fog, and also that if I would come under stressful situations, I would become somewhat anxious, and then I would go over this cliff of depression. And it wasn't like, oh, well, we'll go for a run and feel better. We'll have a chat and we'll feel better. It was like, I just want out of here kind of depression, right? So obviously, I'm concerned about this, and I went into one of my colleagues, internal medicine colleagues, and I explained this to them, and they said, well, let's run some tests. So they ran the tests, and what I got back was, hey, everything checks out for your age. You're just getting older. Why don't you take an antidepressant? So, that was such an existential moment for me, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, it's all going to be downhill from here. And my grandmother, who I was very close with, my grandparents on my mom's side, we were particularly close. She used to tell me all the time as a kid, Jeff, it's hell to get old. You don't ever want to get old. And I heard that over and over and over again. And then my mother picked up that mantra, Jeff, it's hell to get old. You don't ever want to get old. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm getting old. I don't want to get old. So I refused to do that. I refused to take the antidepressant. And that's the point at which I threw myself into the functional medicine, integrative medicine, age management medicine space. Jeffrey Life was on the airline magazines, for Cenogenics and things like that. I'm like, well, somebody's out there trying to do something different. So I kind of went down that path. And then that led me to actually what I call base jump out of the whole cardiology world in 2012. And initially I was going to do concierge cardiology, and then I realized that was too narrow a scope. So it was going to be health optimization. Then I realized that was too narrow a scope. And then ultimately it grew into Gladden Longevity, which is, basically really trying to create an exponential response to the exponential problem of aging, which I think we're, well on the way to doing. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. But I will tell you this, after 2.5 years in that space, I figured everything out. Obviously I'd help some other people, but I had subclinical hypothyroidism. Like all my blood work worked completely normal. It was only when they tested my reflexes that they were slow. Now we do resting metabolic rates on everyone. And genetically, I don't convert inactive thyroid to active thyroid in my brain efficiently. I have a SNP, a DIO2 SNP it's called, that I'm homozygous for, and it decreases my capacity to take inactive thyroid and make it into active thyroid in the brain itself. So if you just put me on Synthroid or T4, right, which is a normal thyroid replacement, it wouldn't have helped me that much. And so getting on the right thyroid, the T3 and the T4 together, really the lights came back on. I'm like, wow, this, like within a week, the lights came back on. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Then I was hormonally depleted, right? Testosterone and DHEA. And I used to tell people in my 40s, people would say, are you doing anything with hormone replacement? I say, no, I actually donate to you guys. But then in my 50s, lo and behold, the body type was changing. So when I got on the testosterone and DHEA, I lost 20 pounds of fat, put on 10 pounds of muscle, and I felt great again. And then the anxiety, the depression, and the brain fog were related to the fact that I don't make neurotransmitters very efficiently, which was all genetically based, right? So I don't have Alzheimer's genes. My dad ended up dying with dementia. But, once you understand, what I learned was once you deconstruct the situation and actually understand what you're dealing with, then you can actually get the right solution. So I was able to get on the right combination of supplements, quite honestly, is what it took for me. And when I did that, it's like, oh, well, I'm fine now. And I learned how to meditate, and, I cleaned up my gut. And the next thing you know, it's like, wow, I feel amazing. I've been practicing sick care. I can't do that anymore. I don't want to have those conversations. I want to help people actually optimize their life. And so that's when I left in 2012.
That's amazing. Kelly?
Yeah, so energy was one of the first things that you noticed, that your energy started to go down and depression started to creep in, and that's such a sort of an invisible currency for people. So you say energy is the foundation of youth. So what are some of the signs that your energy economy is really collapsing, and how are some of the ways that can be detected in labs?
Yeah, I think people can tell when they feel tired, although what's interesting is that as humans, we tend to normalize what is. So let's say that you're losing some capacity at a very slow rate. People will, it's almost like boiling a frog, right? They don't quite realize they're getting boiled because it's happening so slowly. And so some people, they'll say, well, I can't do what I used to do, but I feel fine. I feel good, right? And it's only when you actually, again, deconstruct it and figure out, oh, their mitochondria aren't working well, or they, their hormones are off, or their thyroid's off, or whatever we discover, and they feel good again. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could feel this good, right? So there's a little bit of a situation where people tend to normalize what is. So if you can't do what you used to do, then you've already lost energy, essentially, right? Even if you quote unquote feel fine. And it's not going to be getting better on its own. So I think you want to take any change and actually go after it. So for example, in my case, and I'll just share this with your audience, I wake up 27 every day, right? And Kelly knows this. And if I don't feel 27, I don't say, oh, but you're good for your age, right? I was born in 1954, so I'll let you do the math. But, I'm good for my age. I can do anything I want. I can mountain bike, go for a run. I can do anything I want, right? I never say that. I say, no, if I don't feel 27, what do I need to do to be 27 again? Because it's so powerful, because we're so used to trying to acquiesce to the aging process by consoling ourselves that, hey, we're actually doing okay, right? And that's really one of the worst things you can do. So if you're feeling like you can't do what you used to do, then that means you don't have the energy you used to. And if you feel like you don't have the energy, then you definitely don't have the energy either. So I think that's a really important thing to take action on. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty powerful limiting belief that we are told over and over and over again that, well, you're doing well for your age. And one of the things I loved about the first chapter or so of your book, or the first, what's called section of the book, was talking about mindset, because I'm a huge believer in the power of the mindset. If that's not right, and no matter what you do externally or what vitamin you put in or what supplement, it really always will come down to the mindset. So I love that part of your book. Kelly?
Yeah, I was going to say, going back to energy. So what are some of the ways that people can sort of seal those energy leaks as they're aging? Because our audience is 50 plus, and you say it gets exponential, once the older we get.
Well, I think, there are many, many different ways in which you can feel a lack of energy, right? You can have chronic inflammation from a leaky gut. You can have poor nutrition or poor nutrient balance. You can have low thyroid. You can be low on hormones. You can have low mitochondrial function. You can have too much oxidative stress. You can have so many different things that can funnel into this feeling of having less energy. You can have a chronic infection that you don't know about. You can have a root canal where you've got an infection. You don't know why you feel tired all the time, but you've got a chronic infection there. So there's just a myriad of things that funnel into this general malaise or lack of energy, if you will. What's important is to actually not say, well, I feel tired, so I'll, drink a Red Bull, right? It's like, no, why is this happening? And once you understand it, then you're empowered to actually change it. And I think that's really important. So,
Mark, do you have a question?
No, I was going to get into the 5 circles of longevity. I just want to really chunk this down, keep it nice and simple for our audience here so that we can walk away from this podcast and say, this is a very vast, deep topic. This book is meaty, Doc. It's a great, meaty book there. It definitely takes a lot of, rereading things, learning some of the tests, but it can be overwhelming. One of the things I got with it, I was like, wow, this is a lot. Where do I start? So what I'd like to speak about is take what we have in the book and say, where do I start? What are some of the simple things I could do right now? Let's go through a little bit of that, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I tried to write the book in a way that, to quite honestly, not make it too technical, but to actually make it have enough real content that people could actually start to get their arms around something, rather than just do something that was lighter, so to speak. But back to the 5 circles, really, what we've discovered is that if you can picture this, picture an outer circle, and then inside that outer circle, there are 4 circles, and the 4 circles basically form a Venn diagram, right? So they overlap in the center. And in the center of that Venn diagram is 30 and 300. So when we're 100 years old, we want a 30-year-old body and a 300-year-old mind. And I think what's really important in this whole longevity conversation is to know what it is you're targeting, right? Like, what is it? What does longevity mean to you? Well, it means I'm going to be able to play with my grandkids and still get in and out of the car when I'm 80. Okay, well, that's one conversation. But I really think that the science has progressed to the point where we are the first generation of all time to actually have the ability to have a 30-year-old body and, again, develop a 300-year-old psychospiritual mind by age 100, where we can live a life that nobody's ever lived before on the planet, right? Nobody's ever lived that before. And so I think the first thing to understand is, what is your target? Because if you're targeting, well, I just want to be able to get in and out of the car when I'm 85, well, that's about what you'll get, right? So, but if you're really targeting something different, then you'll get that too, because the technology does exist. So the life energy circle is a circle that binds them all. And then inside are the other 4. And the other 4 are longevity, which is actually looking at what are called the hallmarks of aging, which are actually the actual biological processes that are both expressions of aging, but also drive aging, right? So this is different than looking at your gut and your hormones. This is actually looking at senescent cell burden and mitochondrial dysfunction and telomere shortening and, chronic inflammation and messenger RNA splicing dysregulation, a bunch of technical terms that actually are starting to go awry, and that's really the current in the river that's causing you to age, right? So this becomes the root cause of your problems, right? So there's symptom-driven medicine, like I was trained. Then there's functional medicine, which is root cause medicine, which is how I fix myself. But aging and longevity is actually the root cause of the root cause. So the longevity circle is in there, but it's inside the life energy circle. Then there's health, of course. You want to go through every organ system. And there's performance. How do I be, fast, agile, strong, quick, balanced, great cardiovascular capacity, reserve, flexibility when I'm 100? Okay, well, if I'm going to be that at 100, I need to be it today. If I'm going to be it today, then I need to train for it, right? Because when you're 18, you lift some weights and go for a run, you're pretty good. But at my point in life, your points in life, it takes more specialized training to be there, right? And then the final one is that the environments we reside in. So the environments is really four that we live in: home, work, business, travel, vacation. Those are the four predominant ones. And each of those needs to be architected to make it as effortless as possible to support the mission. And that means knowing where your sneakers are and what's in the refrigerator, but it also means having clean air and clean water and access to the things that you need and taking the toxins out of your life, right? So when you put that whole thing together, that's really the 5 circles. But it's the life energy circle that's the ring that binds it all. So when you're asking, well, where do people start? They start there. They start with their mindset. And I think what's most important is to have a growth mindset, right? Which is a term everybody's heard, but nobody ever really defines. And for me, the way I define it is this way. It's like, are you married to your questions or are you married to your answers? Right? We feel like it's our goal in life to go through life and find our answers, right? Like we're on a mission to find our answers. Well, we've got our answers here. Now we know this, and this. Okay, well, that's great. But all answers have a shelf life. It's really questions that drive all progress. So even if it's political, even if it's religious, even if it's whatever, it's the questions inside that will make you better, that will get you closer to where you want to go. So it's the questions. It's more important to identify your questions than it is your answers. And so once you actually identify the target that you're going after, in my case, it's 3,300, and you identify the questions that will drive you there, like how good can I be? How do I make 100 the new 30? How do I live well beyond 120? How do we live young for a lifetime? And how do we develop a 300-year-old mind? Those are our questions. We wake up to those questions every day. Even though we have thousands of answers here, and Kelly knows that, we're not married to any of the answers. We're only married to the questions. That keeps us eternally curious. That keeps us constantly learning. That keeps us constantly evolving and constantly developing. And that's how you stay young. That's how, that's a youthful mindset right there. So I think that growth mindset is one of the pivotal pieces. And it's, apart from claiming an age that you want to be for the rest of your life, which is also key. You never want to acquiesce to your chronological age. And then having a mindset where it's like, what questions am I going to live by for the rest of my life? Not what answers am I going to live by, right? And when you basically define that for yourself, now you're actually fueling the jet that's going to enable you to take off. That's how I see it. So.
I was going to speak to our audience out there who, maybe like myself, you did take care of yourself your whole life and you thought you were doing okay. You're getting to the gym and you're breathing and you're getting outside and, Mediterranean diet and sleeping and all the things. But until you test, you really do not know. So I did become a patient of Gladden Longevity and got to walk through this incredible concierge experience and all of the testing. And what is just so phenomenal and fascinating is all the different angles that Gladden Longevity takes to look at every single system of your body, from your glycohelix, just everything. So Dr. Gladden, can you just use the heart as one example of all the different ways you go about looking at the heart, all the different angles, the symphony of just the heart?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. I think one of the things that's really important for the audience to understand is that every medical test is like looking at something through a particular lens, right? So the analogy you can think about is, humans have a lens in each eye, and we have stereoscopic vision right between that. We can have depth perception because we have a right eye and a left eye. A fly, on the other hand, has many lenses in its eye, right? It's a compound eye. And it brings into its brain the reality that it visualizes through all those different lenses and then integrates them. Another analogy to a compound eye would be the blindfolded people all feeling an elephant, right? That's like a compound eye. Each one is feeling something different. They're seeing, quote unquote, something different, the trunk, the hoof, the tail, whatever. And so medical testing is like that. Every medical test is one lens. And there is no one medical test that tells you all the answers. So you can get a clearly CTA. Great. That tells you anatomy. Doesn't tell you function. Doesn't tell you the glycocalyx. Doesn't tell you your blood pressure, right? So you have to actually understand that in order for an organ system to come into focus, it has to be looked at through multiple lenses, and then it can come into focus. So in our world, we have multiple lenses that we use here to look at the cardiovascular system, right? Some of them are things that are included in everybody's program that we do in the office. We can measure central aortic pressure, and we can see the stiffness in the arteries, and we can measure the balance between sympathetic, which is a stress response, which can constrict arteries, and parasympathetic, which can relax arteries. Then we can look at the function of a test. We can put you on a bike and measure your VO2 max and your anaerobic threshold and what your heart's pumping ability is as you increase the workload, right? And we see very subtle changes there that indicate there could be a problem. We have a scope where we can look under the tongue and actually see the architecture of the arteries and the veins and see, do you have a preserved what's called glycocalyx, which is like a spongy lining inside the artery that protects the artery. And if you don't have that, we can rebuild it. Everything that you have, we can deal with, right? Then you can get a clearly CTA, a calcium score, an echocardiogram. All those are different lenses, and then you put that together, then you get a clear idea of what's happening for the heart.
Can you elaborate on the glycocalyx? Did I say it correctly? Because I read it in your book, and I think a lot of people who have high blood pressure and is it high cholesterol or high triglycerides? I want to make sure I get this right.
Yeah, well, the glycocalyx is really, if you want to have healthy arteries, right? And cardiovascular disease is still, I guess, the number one killer in Western civilizations. So if you want to have healthy arteries, you really want to have a healthy glycocalyx. So if you imagine that your arteries are like garden hoses, right? Then you have an outside layer that's kind of tough, right? It keeps the lawnmower from cutting it. That's the adventitia. Then you have an inner portion, which in the artery is muscle, so that it can either relax and dilate, right? You need to dilate to get more blood flow to your legs or for sexual function or brain function. And then it needs to constrict at times, right? And then you have a skin that lines the inside of the hose, and that's the endothelium. And that is really the boss. That's really what sort of signals the muscle to either relax or constrict. And that's through a molecule called nitric oxide, NO, not nitrous oxide like a dentist uses, but NO, nitric oxide. And then inside on the endothelium is sort of like a fuzz that grows, almost like the moss at the bottom of a stream, right? And it's made of a proteoglycan glycoprotein, which I'm only saying that term because it can be destroyed very quickly with sugar and salt and processed foods and even stress. And it can be regrown very quickly with the right supplements. So when you have a healthy glycocalyx, the glycocalyx senses blood flowing through the artery, and if you start exercising, it senses more blood flow. It signals the endothelium to make more nitric oxide, which relaxes the artery, which dilates it. The glycocalyx also keeps the cholesterol from penetrating into the artery and forming the plaque in the first place. And it also is negatively charged and will reflect other things off. Many viruses like COVID actually have adapted to be attracted to the negative charge on the glycocalyx, and that's why so many people had vasculitis with COVID, because it would attach to the glycocalyx, right? So it's super important to get that right. So we do a lot with testing the glycocalyx and its response to exercise and other things. And then, as I said, we know how to rebuild it with things like Arterosil, Revasca. We can improve nitric oxide. You can improve nitric oxide with a high nitrate diet, with things like, if you're not allergic to or have problems with oxalate, with things like kale. If you are, with arugula, beets and spinach are quite good as well. And then supplements to help you make nitric oxide. So when you get all that right, you can have the arteries of a very youthful person, right? So, yeah.
And that would also help with the high blood pressure because of the arteries or no?
Correct. That's correct. So high blood pressure is interesting. It can be anatomic. Another piece of the artery issue is, I talked about sugar, is insulin. So there's so many people walking around with occult sort of metabolic syndrome. In other words, they're when they go into their doctor and they get a hemoglobin A1C tested, it's okay, it's 5.4. Their fasting blood sugar is okay, it's 95. Well, you have nothing to worry about. Well, if we do a stress test on your pancreas and we give you 75 grams of glucose to drink and we see what your sugar does and what your insulin does, all of a sudden we see whether or not you're pushing out more insulin than you should, whether or not your sugar goes up higher than it should, and we can see what the glycocalyx can be impacted by. And also when you have high insulin levels, it's aging your arteries more quickly. Everybody's heard of hardening of the arteries. So we can measure the thickness of the artery in the neck with a CIMT, carotid intimal medial thickness test. But also when the artery is exposed to a lot of insulin, it forms more of these senescent cells, which are older cells that take up more space and they're relatively stiff, and the artery gets stiff and it can't dilate, and pressure goes up because of that. It goes up because of stiffness in the artery, and plaque formation adds to that, and it goes up because people are stressed and they're putting sympathetic nervous system tone, constricting the artery on top of it, right? And then the glycocalyx isn't working and nitric oxide is not working, so now they see their doctor and it goes even higher. So yeah, this is kind of how it happens.
Wow. So let's talk about Kelly for a second here.
Yeah.
I want to hear how she did. Where did she do well?
Oh my gosh.
And where did she crap out, for lack of a
That's
better word?
not
if you want to talk about
She's not going to tell our audience, but one thing about me, Doc, I tell everything to everybody. I keep
you should know
she
that
tells
Kelly
me
has
on
one
the
of
down low, but I want you to. So, but go ahead.
Yeah,
how'd she do?
Well, come on over. We'll check you out. No, Kelly has an amazing cardiovascular system. She had a really high VO2 anaerobic threshold. So she's been an athlete her entire life.
Yeah.
She grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. I think she had to run just to kind of get dinner. But so she's been very athletic, and it showed up in her cardiovascular testing. The thing, if I can disclose it, is the thing that she was missing was hormone replacement therapy. And so she had never really started that. And so that was a major thing that needed to be addressed for her. So I'll just leave it at that. And doing hormone replacement therapy is critical. So
speaking of
if
that,
I did not test, I never would have considered it. I mean, my mom's 80. She never did it. My grandmother made it to 95. She never did it. And I just never considered it. So until I went and I tested, but once I tested and saw how low it was, I'm like, I do have brain fog. I know my brain is not as sharp as it was when I was 23. And the DEXA scan did show I had some osteopenia in my hips, and my family, the women, do shrink. And if I ever have a husband again, you want all that to be working. So I was like, sign me up. So I would have never done that. And who knows where I would have been in 5 years or 10 years had I not started. And I'm, a month in now.
Well, a couple of things. Number one is this: your 95-year-old grandmother also grew up in a generation where what you and I call organic is what they eat at the butcher and the local grocery. Okay. So it's definitely a different generation. So, Doc, what's your take on the hormone therapy for removing the black box warning for menopause that they just put out there? I think RFK just announced that a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I think hormone replacement therapy is critical. You can't really be 30 at 100 without hormone replacement therapy. The problem is that hormone replacement therapy alone is not going to make you 30 when you're 100. But without it, you're not going to be 30 when you're 100. The thing about hormone replacement therapy is that it's a two-edged or a two-sided coin, right? On the one hand, it can do a lot of great things. On the other hand, it can increase the risk of cancer for a woman or a man if it's done inappropriately. And what we find is that there are many clinics out there and many clinicians out there that are doing it inappropriately, right? So we just signed up another client this week who I was talking to her, and she said, I got put on estrogen patches by my gynecologist, 4 or 5 years ago. It's like, oh, did they put you on any progesterone? No, just estrogen. So unopposed estrogen is dangerous, right? It's dangerous. You have to know somebody's genetics also to know if they're predisposed to cancer, whether breast cancer, endometrial cancer, or prostate cancer for a man. And then you've got to know not only the hormone levels, but you've got to know how is somebody metabolizing those hormones. So then you want to know their detox genetics, and then you want to actually measure the hormone metabolites, because when when your body makes testosterone, it doesn't stay as testosterone. Some of it turns into estrogens, and some of it goes down 3 different pathways to ultimately be excreted out, right? These things are cycling through your system. They're not constant fixtures. And so if you're metabolizing it down the wrong pathway, all of a sudden you can end up with a much higher risk for prostate cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer. Embryologically, breast tissue and prostate cancer and prostate tissue rather come from the same tissue, right? So they're both hormonally sensitive. So if a mother had a history of breast cancer, then her son may have a higher incidence of prostate cancer. If a father had prostate cancer, then a daughter may have a higher incidence of breast cancer. So you have to understand that. But again, you need to look at the genetics of it all. And then if we can manipulate those metabolites to go down healthy pathways, then all of a sudden you get the benefits without the risks. There are some people that should not be on hormone replacement therapy, right? And those are people with, certain genetic predispositions for cancer and other things. But for the vast majority of people, if it's done safely, it's really pretty magical. But in all the studies, it's not even done safely, right? I'll tell you, there's a really interesting study that came out of Kaiser, though, that looked at 500,000 women, so 500,000 women, right? And they looked at these women related to, did they receive any kind of hormone replacement? And it didn't matter whether they just got testosterone, they just got estrogen, they got testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone, they just got progesterone. It didn't matter. If they just got something, it didn't matter if they took it for a month or they took it for 2 years. They followed those people for about, I think it was 15 or 20 years out. And the people that got any form of hormone replacement therapy, whether it was done properly or not, had a 50% reduction in dementia.
Wow. So is it too late to start at some point? I mean, if you're 70, 80, is it too late?
Yeah, technically it's never too late, but the sweet spot is in the first decade after menopause.
Okay.
For a woman. Yeah.
That's good. And again, the testing is so important, not making it about me, but when you talk about the genetic testing, I knew I had a very strong family history of heart disease on my dad's side, but I just ignored it because it was all the men in the family. They were smokers and drinkers and stressed and overweight and not active. But when Dr. Luke pulled up my DNA results, he's like, no, you have a very high marker for a myocardial infarction. And it's important as you age that you continue, that you address that. So again, I would have just like, that wasn't a big deal, but it came right up in my tests. And so that was just, unless you test your genes, you don't know. And especially if you don't know your family history, it's important.
Oh, that's right. And a lot of people don't know their family history either because, one parent was around or not around, or some people are adopted, or even with, donor conceived children, things like that. They may not know who their parents are per se. So doing the genetics, however, really trumps all of that. It really gives you, the cards that you're holding is what we like to say. So you can't win a game if you don't know the cards you're holding.
That is a good point. On genetics, I think once upon a time, you talk about growth or fixed mindset, we were all taught that genetics are probably 50% of the game here. In other words, if your parents had something, you got 50% chance that you're going to get that. Do you feel that is still the same with the way technology is advancing in anti-aging longevity? Or is that something that still holds weight?
Yeah, so it really depends. It's, it's Mendelian genetics, right? So you get half a gene from mom and half a gene from dad. And so they also had 2 halves, and then they each donated one of their halves, right? So you can imagine there's 4 different combinations there, right? If you just kind of map that out. So if they were, if mom had an AB and dad had an AB, then you could get AA, BB, AB, or BA, right? So there's a 50% chance that you got A and B, and then a 25% chance you got AA, and another 25% chance you got BB. So it's never been that it's just a 50% chance, right? But the point is that all that's irrelevant if you just do your own genetics and say, well, this is what I got, right? Now I actually know what I'm dealing with. So you don't even have to worry about your parents at that point in time. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what, out of all these tests, and I know there's a lot of them, and I know Kelly did a bunch of them, what would be let's say 3 to 5 tests that somebody could do right now that could give them at least a snapshot of some of the most important things that they can go out there and address?
I think a resting metabolic rate is really critical because as people age, the thyroid function tends to go down. You simply sit in a chair and you wear a mask for about 20 minutes, and we measure how much oxygen you consume and how much carbon dioxide you produce. And from that, we can actually get a read on the metabolic rate, right? And I think combining that with a genetic test to look at whether you convert inactive to active thyroid in the brain is very important. I think doing a hormone profile where you're looking at not only the blood levels of hormones, but actually your urine metabolites of those hormones is another really important test. I think it's really important to do a cardiopulmonary exercise test. You know, it's one of the lenses, and probably combine it with a couple of the other things that we do in the office, you know, like looking at the glycocalyx and central aortic pressure and sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system balance. I think there's another simple test we do in the office that takes about 5 minutes, that you put a couple of clips on your wrists and sit there for 5 minutes, and we can see how much stress your system's under. That's super important because that gives us insight into the life status of the life energy circle. So, you know, those tests are not terribly expensive to do, and you can get a good handle on several important things. I think if you're coming in and you're worried about bone density, do a DEXA scan. If your gut's a mess, you know, we can do a stool test and you know, some other things. If you feel like you've got, issues with detoxification, you know, doing some genetics to look at how you detox and understanding how to upregulate your ability to detox is quite straightforward, but just needs to be looked at. Once you actually deconstruct the individual, it's pretty easy, quite honestly, to reconstruct the solutions. The problem is that in most clinics, they have solutions and they just throw them against the wall and hope they stick, right? Whereas if you actually understand the problem before you fix the problem, you can do a much better job. I mean, think about your car, right? If you took your car into the shop and they said, oh, well, let's just throw some oil in it, some spark plugs, and see if it runs better. We'd be like, well, okay, it's running a little better, but it's still not quite right. Well, let's throw a little transmission fluid in it, right? As opposed to, let's run some diagnostics and see where the problems are, and then we'll fix those. That's kind of the analogy, right? So,
Well, it's pretty interesting that people will run massive diagnostics on their car, but they won't run it on themselves.
1,000%. And your car, quite honestly, compared to your body, is like, it's like Hot Wheels compared to a Formula One car, right? I mean, that's the difference. That's how sophisticated your body is. It's an all-out fighter jet, right? And you're just gonna throw some oil in it and some spark plugs and hope that's the right answer, really? So
Now, what about like a true age test or a Dunning-Pace test, testing, or a methylation test? Should somebody think about that or no?
you know, you're getting at an important thing, which is looking at your mosaic of ages, right? So you have many biological ages, and a DNA methylation test is going to give you some ages relative to about 11 different organ systems. It's going to give you an overall DNA methylation age, and it's going to give you a rate of aging. It's also going to try to give you some insights into the health of your immune system. So out of all of that, the Dunedin Pace, it's named after a town in New Zealand, actually, Dunedin, kind of a funny name. That probably is the most reliable age on there, your rate of aging. But then, and Kelly had a really low rate of aging. However, the other ones can be useful too, right? So, what's your liver age relative to your brain age, relative to your hormone age, relative to your kidney age, things like that. So all these things are helpful because it helps us to know where to push and where to pull, right? So.
Powerful. So speaking of Formula One, performance is one of the circles, and you are such an incredible athlete. What is a day in the life like where you're keeping up the levels of, still snowboarding and surfing and mountain biking and doing all the things you do? What do you suggest, or what are you doing now to keep up your performance levels?
I don't think most people work out hard enough. And it's not about overtraining. It's just having adequate intensity. Like, there's so much conversation about zone 2, right? Like, zone 2 is like the magic gift. I can tell you, we've been measuring VO2 maxes for over 20 years, right? I used to do it at the heart hospital. I used to do it in my practice in cardiology. Now we do it for every patient here and have been for years. Zone 2 doesn't get you anywhere. it doesn't build your VO2. The way you build the way zone 2 is helpful is if you're an elite athlete and you're overtraining, zone 2 is like God's gift to your body. It's like take a rest, your VO2 will actually go up. But if you're coming off the couch, zone 2, again, to get started is important. But if you're athletic and you're being active, you really want zone 3, which is where you really can't carry on a conversation, and you want that for 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes. And then you want interval training, right, where you're basically breathless for somewhere between 60, 90 seconds, could be 30 seconds even on a short sprint. But the point is, you want to be a combination of all in, and you want some sustained cardio. So the sustained cardio is the cake, right? And then the icing is basically the interval training. Yeah, the guy that, I don't know if you know the name Eliud Kipchoge, he's a guy that ran that staged marathon. Remember when he broke the 2-hour barrier probably about 6 or 7 years ago? He did it in Austria. He had some people running in front of him. He had special shoes. It wasn't an actual race, blah, blah, blah. But he ran 26 point, whatever it is, 3 miles in under 2 hours, right? And the way they train is they will run for like 5 hours at a 9 or 10 minute mile pace, like a really slow pace, right? Just to kind of build the base. And then they do tempo runs on top of that. So, it's that kind of a thing. And since most of us don't have 5 hours to run, if you're doing some zone 3 for 45 minutes or whatever, you're going to get a good base, and then you can do the interval training on top of it.
So zone 2, just to reiterate for everybody, is what, 60 to 70% of maximum heart rate? Is that correct, or is it?
Yeah, that's about right. It's about 60%, 65, 67%. And it's basically you can carry on a conversation easily.
Conversation, right? Then you get a little bit higher.
So rather than trying to, be measuring your heart rate every 3 steps, right? If you can carry on a conversation, you're probably in zone 2. If you can answer a question, but you can't carry on a conversation, you're probably in zone 3. If you can't answer anything, you're in zone 5, right? I mean, you're just all in. And most people don't go all in. They're afraid of hurting themselves. And that's why it's important to be tested so that you actually know what's safe to do and what's not safe to do. So I'm not advocating everybody here that's not been tested to go out and do zone 5. I'm just saying that's how you really build VO2. But what you really want to know is what can I safely do and how do I, build up to where I want to be.
And what's the test for that? Is that a VO2 max test or no?
Yeah, it's a VO2 max test. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
And then you'll know safely how high you can go, or is there other tests?
Yes, that's right. So even in my own case, I've had some injuries and I've come back from some injuries, and I found that it was when I layered in longer sprints on my Vasper, which is a blood flow restriction device also. So now you're reducing your blood flow return, right, to your heart. So you're making it even harder to do the sprint. Let's say that, right? You have cuffs on your arms and your legs. You have 80 PSI in your, or 80 millimeters of mercury in your legs and 40 in your arms is what I do. So it's definitely harder. You're getting more of a burn, right? But when you do those longer sprints, oh my gosh, you build strength so quickly. It'll knock your socks off. Like you get on your mountain bike, you feel like you're on a motorcycle. It's like, holy cow, whose legs are these anyway? And that's what's fun, right? But people don't train with enough intensity to actually get to that point. But a lot of times they do it really from a sane place, is they don't know if it's safe to do it or not, right? So that's the beauty of being tested. You can actually say, oh, well, it's safe for me to do this. I'll be hormonally optimized. I'll have my nitric oxide optimized. Now I can safely do this. Oh my gosh, you can be fitter than you ever thought you could. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. My kids just challenged me to run a 5K turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning, so I may take that challenge.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So performance is a circle, also environment. So I was just with my mom not too long ago, and she was showing some pictures back on the beach and in the 1950s, and people just look different. They just look healthier. You don't see the cellulite, the crepey skin, the obesity. I'm like, wow, the environment has to be such a big factor besides the food. So you talk about this symphony of influence of the environment. Can you talk about how that's affecting our health?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know the food supply has been really polluted, right? The whole food pyramid, the whole, everything has been destroyed, in terms of its fat's the issue, carbs are good, sugar. We traded, healthy fats for sugar and salt, right? And unhealthy fats. And so, I think the engineering of the food, all of it's a mess. The food's a complete mess. I think one of the biggest issues that we actually have is trying to find high quality, high nutrient dense food, right? It's really nutrient density that you're going for. The more nutrients they are in the food, like you can eat a red bell pepper, but it may have, 20% of the nutrients in it that it used to have, right? When I was a kid growing up, or we were kids growing up, or whatever, right? So, it's not just about the food, it's about the nutrient density. So really being able to get nutrient dense food, and that comes really from like regenerative farming, organic farming, where the soil is really, you're not really growing the plant. What you're really doing is creating the soil. When you have super healthy soil, then the plants are naturally full of nutrients, right? And the way you do that is not by putting rows in and planting all corn. It's basically putting plants together that grow next to each other that actually feed each other and feed the soil. Next thing you know, you scoop up the soil, it's full of worms, it's full of nutrients. Now those plants are full of nutrients, right? That's what we want to be eating. It's almost impossible to get a hold of that, even if you go to Whole Foods. And even organic food is different in its nutrient concentrations throughout the year, depending on when it was grown, what season it was grown in, what country it came from. It's really hard to get nutrient-dense food. This is, I think, one of the biggest challenges we have. So,
Dr. Gladden gave a great tip about soup. When he goes to the soup bar at Whole Foods, he puts some broth in, and then he goes to the vegetables and he loads it up, and it's just the most delicious mix. I'm like, I would have not thought to do that, but that's my new winter thing. It's just the broth-based soups and veggies and getting away from the cold salads. And it was so simple, but I'm like, wow, what a great tip, a great way to get your fiber and antioxidants and phytonutrients and a big medley of vegetables in. I love it.
I call it soup as the new salad.
Yeah.
So I go down the soup line and I throw some soup in there, and then I go to the veggie line and I start throwing in all the veggies, and oh my gosh, it's unbelievably tasty, right? I mean, it's like delicious.
Yeah, I just ordered a whole bunch of bone broth, and I'm going to start making my own.
Nice.
So my comment was going to be on glyphosate in the foods and how that depletes minerals along with, destroying the gut. And then we can go on and on and on back with it. So
and we measure that. We detox people here. You got to have the right genetics. You got to, wash your food. Actually Dawn detergent is a very strong surfactant. If you soak your food in Dawn and then rinse it off thoroughly, you can actually get rid of most of the things that are stuck to it. So most of the pesticides, but we measure that. We do ozone and EBU here, where we can get rid of mold and reboot mitochondria. We have answers for virtually everything here, but really the biggest question is, what are you dealing with? What do you actually need, right? So some people are genetically gifted; they detox great, right? They're not bothered at all by certain things. So yeah.
I have a question. I think this pertains to people in our age group. You talk about an anabolic state versus what was the other state? A catabolic state. And you talked about, eating protein and, too much protein, how that can be harmful to you. Can you just kind of touch on that? Because I think a lot of people in our generation are definitely getting a lot of protein in, and maybe that's not the best thing for muscle.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So really, people on high protein diets die sooner.
Okay, so here's my question on that. What if, hang on, let me give you the variable. What if the outlier, what if they have metabolic syndrome, they're insulin resistant, high cholesterol, thyroid issues, all those taking place? Is it good to temporarily put them on a higher protein diet because they're eating a bunch of refined carbs and all the crap they're putting in their system, or is it better to do something else?
Well, there's kind of two questions there. The first question is, if they're eating a bunch of crap, then the idea is to really stop that, right? And so what you really want to do is go to more nutrient-dense diet. So being plant-based and eating a variety of plants, like most people eat about 14 or 15 foods, right? Ideally, you'd be eating like 40 foods, right? And getting lots of different things. Every time I go to the store, I try to buy different things because you want variety. And your body loves variety. And if you get the same foods all the time, then your immune system starts reacting to it. Now you have food sensitivities. Now you've got other things, that's leaky gut, right? So you really want variety. So you want to get the trash out first, right? And get the nutrient density in. The concept that elderly people need to eat more protein I think really came from the fact that if people are hormonally depleted, they might need more protein to build muscle. But if you're hormonally replete, you just need a normal amount of protein. Now, the other thing is that if you have a nutrient sensing system in your body, and if you're getting yourself a lot of amino acids, a lot of protein and amino acids, which comprise proteins, you're activating one side of a teeter-totter called mTOR, which basically is cellular division, cell growth, muscle growth, and things like that. All perfect and fine. But when you're on mTOR all the time, you die sooner. You have a higher incidence of cancer. What counteracts that is AMPK, when you're actually nutrient depleted. Now your body starts recycling the old stuff out of your cells, the old proteins, the misfolded proteins, and that autophagy and that mitophagy of making new mitochondria. When you are fasting, when you are using things like spermidine, when you're not replete with proteins, that's when your body has a chance to recycle. And that is like super healthy. When you do that, you live longer. So this idea that you want to be pounding protein every day is really, I don't know where this came from. This carnivore diet is another complete misnomer. It's so rich in methionine. People with high methionine diets die sooner also. What you really want, and of course, everybody's a little different, so they should be tested. What foods are they sensitive to? What's their gut doing and all that? So this is not, don't take this as general advice, but the general direction is more variety, more nutrient-dense foods. And then what we like to get protein in is that you can use something like perfect aminos, right? Which is, you take a scoop of that. It's all the essential amino acids, in a
this little
form
thing
where
here.
99%, there it is. 99% of it goes into making protein. Whereas if you eat an egg white, only 48 or 49% of it goes into making protein. The rest actually turns into carbs. So when you're eating collagen, because you think you're getting all this protein, only 22% of that goes into making protein. And yes, collagen stimulates more collagen production, so it's useful, but don't fool yourself that you're making protein from all this protein you're eating. A lot of it's going into carbs. So, it's really a little bit of buyer beware on this high protein thing.
So would other hormesis techniques besides fasting be good to turn on the AMPK?
AMPK? Yeah, everything you can do to stress the body, right?
So
Exercise,
like sauna,
cold plunge,
HIIT training, cold plunge,
ozone therapy. All of these are hormetic stresses on the body. Exercise, ozone sauna, all those things basically are stressing the system to some extent, right? And biology is an anti-fragile system. In other words, when it meets an unexpected challenge that doesn't permanently damage it, it comes back stronger. That's how you lift a weight, right? Your muscle grows because of that.
And this is one of those fixed mindsets in this country when it comes to stress. Everybody thinks stress is bad. Yet this stress is bad, but eustress or using hormesis techniques is the mitochondria love that from at least.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. The worst thing you can do is sit on the couch, right?
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can do. Even if you're overtraining, well, that's pretty bad too. But the worst thing you can do is sit on the couch. So
Gladden Longevity is on the cutting edge of longevity science, and we could say that Dr. Gladden is on the bleeding edge of longevity science. You are out there traveling the world, seeing things that could be done in other countries that can't be done in the U.S., at least right now. So what is maybe the next thing, the big thing that you're looking to unlock?
Well, I'm getting ready to start reprogramming my epigenetics, utilizing a combination of molecules that have been shown to work in mice, and they've been shown to work in some humans as well. The Yamanaka factors were discovered by a Japanese scientist and another guy. The Nobel Prize was awarded in 2012. These were basically 4 genes that when they were activated made a cell young again. The problem was they had too much cancer. So instead of activating 4, they activated 3, and it decreased the cancer risk, but there was still some. So then they would just pulse the genes on. So then David Sinclair at Harvard said, well, maybe we can do it without having to turn the genes on at all. Maybe we can just give somebody the right chemicals and actually do this. So they developed that, and there was a paper published in July of 23. And I now have a hold of one of those cocktails that they put together, these supplements that other people have used to good benefit, and I'm going to see how that works out. So that's kind of what's next up. Yeah.
Yeah. So Gladden Longevity, it's a concierge medicine clinic, bespoke process when people come in, very customized to what that person needs. It is a 12-month process plus, people stay for years and years. What does Gladden Longevity look like in 2035?
Well, I actually think that if the world doesn't blow itself up, and AI doesn't kill us all, I do believe that with the advent of quantum computing and AI, that we will crack the aging code almost in a weekend. When you look at the power of quantum computing and what it's actually able to do, what it's actually able to really excel at is picking signal out of noise, right? So what do I mean by that? So you can have a field of data and you can't really figure out what the signal is in there because it looks just noisy, right? It's like, well, I can't see anything in that data that would lead me to any conclusions. Well, the quantum computer can find the signal in the noise, right? The other thing it can do is it can massively parallel process possibilities. So rather than sequentially trying this and this and this and this and this on a classical computer, it can do millions of possibilities simultaneously. So let's say you had a digital twin, right? Let's say we build a digital twin of each of us, right? From all the testing we could do. And now we unleash the computer on it and say, what are the top priorities? What do we need to do first? How's this going to play out? What's the plan? Boom, here it is. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's what's going to happen. I think actually Gladden Longevity may function in the virtual space with testing that can be done at home, although not all the testing can be done at home. So there'll always be procedures and testing done here in the office, but certainly from the standpoint of the coaching, I think a lot of it will be done at home. So, yeah.
That's exciting. That's very exciting.
That makes sense. Well, Dr. Gladden, you're truly redefining what's possible for the human body. And for everyone listening, this is your invitation to stop playing defense with your health. You can rebuild your energy, you can restore, you can change your biology, you can change your environment, you can reinvent your future. You can start now. We definitely want you to connect to all things Gladden Longevity. Dr. Gladden's podcast is phenomenal. I listen to it almost daily, just incredible guests in all realms of anything that has to do with longevity, environmental, psychospiritual, nutrition. He covers everything. So I definitely recommend that you go there and get some great details. Get the book. By the time this airs, the course will be out. So check out the course. It goes even deeper with over 70 videos with Dr. Gladden that are specific to each chapter. We'd love you, come in and check out the clinic and see what goes on there. I'm a big advocate. I'm a patient there, and I highly recommend that. You deserve it. You owe it to yourself to go in there and deconstruct your body and let them rebuild it even better than you could ask, think, or imagine today. And Dr. Gladden is at Gladden Longevity, just the best way to get in touch with all things in the Gladden ecosystem.
Yeah, I think if they go to GladdenLongevity.com, if you go to GladdenLongevity.com, you'll be able to, either make contact with us directly or go to the social media things that we have or find the Gladden Longevity supplement shop or order the book or find the podcast. All of it will be there for you. So, yeah, that'd be great. Whatever we can do to be helpful to you, we're happy to. So,
Dr. Gladden, I always say this, that, if a person's here listening or watching this, it's not by mistake. Their intuition got them here. So there could be something, you could be a ticking time bomb, not to put the fear in you, but if you're here, you're learning, you got to take it the next step. Go to Gladden Longevity, go grab this darn book. You get 1, 2, 3 things out of this thing that could turn your whole life around. Get a really good growth mindset out of it. Realize that there is a lot, but you can apply it to your life and live a healthier lifestyle, man. You're here for a reason. That's what I'm getting at. So hopefully,
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you got something. Everybody, Kelly, you want to say something else before I wrap this up or no?
Yeah,
by the way, I could talk to you, Dr. Gladden. I could talk to you for about 5 hours. I'm like a kid in a candy store here. So, but I got to be respectful to your time. And I know you've been hitting hard today. So
yeah,
go ahead, Kelly.
It's all good. All
Yeah, I was
right.
also
All
going to
good.
say that Dr. Gladden's been working very hard on an app called Wingman, and it's just an incredible resource right on your phone that you can use as a great guide and a coach and accountability and support. And there's so much great content there, including everything that he has handpicked. So every supplement that he recommends, all of the devices that he recommends. And I've been little by little, getting some of those things for my own home. And look, we all deserve to live longer, stronger, healthier years. And the whole theme at Dr. Gladden's is to live young for a lifetime. So if that sounds interesting to you, then we highly recommend you get connected to all things GladdenLongevity.com.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the longevity wingman is we've finished it. It's being built now by the app company that's building it. So we'll have the MVP out hopefully by the end of the year and play with it. But you can look for that next year, probably after the holidays. The idea behind the app is to coach people around the 5 circles and to take all the friction out, right? All the friction out of what it takes to optimize your life. So that's the goal, and we'll keep refining it until we get there, I'm sure. So anyway, it's been great chatting with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Dr. Gladden, you definitely walk the walk and talk the talk, and we appreciate you sharing everything and your wisdom here today. Outside of that, hopefully everybody got something out of this podcast that you could apply to your life and live a healthier lifestyle. In the meantime, that is a wrap. We will see you all on the next show. Bye-bye now.